Go. Don't want you to see anymore.
And the winner is...
Thank you, so much to the crew and the cast. Rory is here. Joshua, Kevin, Neshla, and Oliver, of course. Yeah, this film is really about someone that feels like they're too rough or too damaged to be loved, and I just want to dedicate this to anyone that's ever felt like that, because no one, because no one is ever too rough to be loved. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Joe Neumaier, film critic for New York's WOR Radio, and welcome to this very special Q&A for Too Rough, which just won the Scottish BAFTA Award for Best Short Film. It has won 25 awards since premiering at Australia's Flickerfest and, in America, at South by Southwest, has received numerous other nominations, and has won 2 awards at 2 Academy qualifying film festivals. I'm honored now to welcome the film's writer and director, Sean Lìonadh. Welcome, Sean. Thank you so much for being here, and congratulations on the film and the recent BAFTA win.
Thanks so much, Joe. Thanks for having me.
So great to have you here. So much to talk about. Let's start off by talking about the origins of the story in the film. The events in it come from something in your life. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, everything that's happened in the film, I think at some point has happened to me. I had a lot of sort of gold to mine from my childhood. By gold, I mean trauma. And on a surface level, I guess I had to sneak a boyfriend out once, and it got to the point where I was like, "Can you jump out the window, please? Will you risk your life to not be seen?" But I think underneath that, I really wanted to tell a story about a character who felt like some part of them fundamentally was unlovable, some part of their background or their character couldn't be loved and therefore had to be hidden. And I wanted to see how he would react under the intense pressure that he endures in the film.
Yeah, emotionally, the character of Nick is dealing with things involving his family, and they echo not just universally, but in your life as well, the idea of hidden truths and shame and the difficulty sometimes of revealing the truth of who we are, both to our families and to our lovers. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We learn, I think, how to hide when we're young, how to behave, how to be seen as acceptable in society, in various different environments and institutions. And then when we fall in love, which is this wild and free thing, we're still trying to hide. And when the very thing that we need to do is to let ourselves be seen, because that's how love works. You know, people see each other, and there's a hell of a lot of blocks to intimacy that I think we all suffer from these days. And I just wanted to explore that.
Yeah. In fact, it requires a lot of openness for Nick to bring his boyfriend to his home, because there's a sense of shame there, and early on in the film, we're not quite aware of how deep it goes. But obviously, as the film goes on, we realize that we're sort of immersed in it with both of them, and that was a very intense thing, I would imagine, kind of being able to depict that in a certain way, right?
It was, and I felt like in some way I was able to show even my friends who watched the film or my family kind of what it was like.
Yeah.
Because for me, my brother even, we don't talk so much, or we didn't talk so much actually before this film came out. There was a lot of unsaid things because we both experienced, the exact same childhood, and but never really talked about it. And he came to see the film play in Glasgow, in our hometown, and after my film played, I went to get a beer to sort of unwind, and only one other person had left the screen, and it was him. And I found him in the corridor, leaning against the wall, crying after watching the film. And he just came up to me and he put his hands on my shoulders and he said, "It was perfect." And that was all that was said. But we just sort of recognized each other, and we recognized what had happened to us, you know,
Yeah.
and it let us really connect.
Yeah, yeah, so impactful. I love the sort of emotional seesaw we experience with Nick and Charlie in the bedroom. We of course empathize with Nick in wanting to keep Charlie in his room to avoid running into Nick's parents who have been drinking, but we also at times connect with Charlie, who senses this dynamic is something that he wasn't expecting, is sort of trapped in the bedroom and is getting a bit irritated and vexed about it all. That's a delicate balance as a writer, isn't it, to allow for that kind of parallel sympathy going on, right?
Yeah, but it's an important one, I think, because people come from different backgrounds and um, don't always understand what their partner, the world that they're walking into with their partner. And I think it allowed us to access a little bit of comedy as well, having him be impatient and almost there's more at stake because it's like at any point is he going to walk out that room? Is he going to expose Nick? And it's the very fact that he then becomes an ally within that world and opens his eyes to it that I think it gives it that tenderness that maybe people are really connecting to.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, that's so beautifully represented in the scene where Nick, in fact, is trying to open the window really frantically and is trying to get out. And there's sort of this urgency that he has, and Charlie comes up behind him and holds him and sort of calms him down. And it's this nice sort of reversal of what the situation could be or we're expecting it to be. And it's a beautiful tenderness that sort of is about, just be here, just see what happens. I'm here with you. And the introduction of Nick's younger brother who barges into Nick's room is also based on truth. Is that right?
Yeah, so originally we'd written a baby, and all the execs and everyone begged me, please, Sean, don't work with the baby. Um, and I would have told them where to go if they hadn't come and suggested that I write my little brother in instead, who he's called Robert. He's autistic as well, and he's kind of a writer's dream. Like you drop him into any situation, any mundane situation, and he turns it into theatre because he just will say all of the things you should not say to people. And was I feel a little bit guilty, but I definitely was. I just used used him in this film as a little grenade to drop in to the film. But also, it brought out Nick's tenderness and a different side of Nick, which was caring and actually very responsible.
Yeah, yeah. What was the writing process like for you? Was it easy? Did it come? Were there kind of hiccups and sort of ebbs and flows to it in some ways because it's such a personal story?
I think it was the first time I'd written with this many people giving me notes, which really lets you interrogate your ideas because then only the strongest ideas will still stand. But no, in a sense, it kind of wrote itself actually. It came out very quickly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's such a visual poetry to Too Rough, an elliptical quality sometimes, which, in which glances speak volumes, and one gesture or bit of behavior represents a lifetime of survival tactics for Nick. And the visuals in the film it's really beautiful and really in so many ways kind of evokes a memory play in some ways. There's shadows and there's, as you mentioned, the claustrophobic aspect to it, but there's also like there's almost a cocoon-like quality that I feel like the visuals work on, and the editing works so beautifully too in that respect. It all has to work in concert to become something that's really emotional, right?
Of course, and Andrew O'Connor did a great job. We looked at Andrea Arnold, Fish Tank, great film, and Ida, one of my favorite films. And yeah, everyone came together, and everyone was from Glasgow on the crew, really, pretty much, with a few exceptions. So we all knew what world we were in, and yeah, everyone worked beautifully.
Yeah, yeah. One moment that encompasses something that really makes an impact on everyone who sees it is when Nick's parents are having a alcohol fueled argument, and Nick sits down and covers the ears of his younger brother, and then his boyfriend Charlie sits down next to him and he covers Nick's ears. And it almost feels like a line of poetry come to life in a lot of ways. How did that moment come about, and what was the origins of it?
just happened. It just came, wrote itself. Sometimes when you write, it's like you're not even in charge. You're instrumental in it, but it's telling itself.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there writing it, and I'm like, that happens. And then I'm a viewer as well, and then so yeah, I can't take credit for that. I don't know if God or Allah or my subconscious wants to take credit. I'll let them. I'll let them answer that question.
And also, but you can certainly answer this one, which is about the visual representation of that, which is wonderful. There would be obviously many ways to sort of shoot that moment, but as a director, as a filmmaker, you find the right sort of sense of almost like the almost like a transgenerational transference in some ways of trauma, and the way it's kind of going through from each of them, right? Kind of the visual representation of that is really inspired, and I would imagine that you were probably thinking about different ways to shoot that, right? Especially in a confined space.
Absolutely, the generational thing is really important to me because I think there's a lot of children who become grown-ups in their own household, and in the end of the film, obviously Nick, for the first time, becomes powerful in the film. The whole film, he's been scrutinized, he's been watched, or he feels as though he's been watched, and finally he's the one doing the watching. In that final scene, they're watching the parents, and the parents are in a sort of childlike, vulnerable state. And that's just the responsibility that a lot of people in my country and well, all over the world have to take on when they find themselves in a family with addiction.
Yeah, the caretaking aspect of children as caretakers of their parents as that's going on, right, is really beautiful. Talk to us about your lead actors who are both so wonderful. They have such grace in their expressive faces. Their performances are wonderful. They have a naturalism to their physicality and a real depth to their performances. What were some conversations you had with them about getting just the right pitch that you wanted?
Yeah, so Rory Malika played Nick and Joshua Griffin played Charlie, and they had two totally different approaches. Rory was very instinctive, emotional. Joshua was more intellectual, research based. But we wanted to make sure they had that chemistry of coming from two different backgrounds, two different worlds. Nick is kind of locked in his body, shying away from the light, shying away from love. Always. We looked at Princess Diana as sort of she does this all the time. She's always almost hiding. Charlie, obviously, the character of Charlie is the opposite. He's used to being seen, confident, and finally he's trapped and he can't really stand being out of that safe limelight at first, but he's challenged.
Yeah. In fact, it almost feels at some points that Joshua sort of has these moments of like, well, can't my physicality sort of work, get me out of this situation? I'm not used to being here. As you're mentioning, like he's not used to sort of being shy and locked in to himself. He's got a sense of, I can kind of figure this out, and almost like a caged tiger in some ways. He's trying to figure out the way out, right?
Yeah, he's in a world he has no idea about, and I think that's what lets a lot of audience members that maybe haven't experienced some of these things, it allows them a way in, through him.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Joshua even has you mentioned a bit of comedy earlier. Joshua has a bit of physicality that feels so organic to young people, like when he flips backwards on the bed to get behind it to avoid being seen by Nick's dad, and the resulting sort of quick thinking act of sweetness and survival when he hands his phone to Nick's brother Adam to distract him. It's a great example of to my eye, of performers using confined space in a very elegant way, and that almost have been in the mix for you as a filmmaker, right?
Yeah, I hope that they had fun. I hope that they were able to feel like they were creating as well. And I mean, they almost put me out of a job, to be honest, on set, because they worked they understood it so much.
Right, right, and the matching of that with a lot of very extreme close-ups, or kind of medium shots that kind of zoom in close a little bit, like that shot where he's handing the cell phone to Adam. It creates another sense of intimacy to these characters in the room. We're really right there with them, aren't we?
Yeah, and I wanted to get closer and closer and deeper and darker as the film went on. You know, we start fairly distant from them, and I wanted it to feel like, you know, the walls are closing in,
Yeah,
the shadows are coming in, and I wanted it to almost be elevated from reality to cinema at the end, because I think when you fall in love, it feels like you're making your own little film,
yeah,
and it's all very handheld and shaky at first, but when they really open up to each other, everything becomes still and more beautiful, more magical, dark, but still more cinematic, you know.
yeah. And a beautiful distillation of all of that is the final moments, as we talked about, the quietude of a darkened room with the TV going on and the parents passed out, and all of that going on, and then in a sense the closeness that then kind of gets you kind of inside of them in a lot of ways. We spoke about the visual poetry in the film, and the warmth and connection that Charlie and Nick have there is really beautiful. As a filmmaker, was that end moment, was that something you were always heading for as you crafted the story and wrote it out?
Again, it just happened when I wrote, um, because I think Hitchcock always says if you have a bomb on a train, the rule of tension is you never blow it up, you know. So this whole film, they're expecting an explosion, and I think it was important to me that the bomb never went off, and actually a more truthful thing and a more uh, melancholy truth was that the parents weren't even available to react to his moment of courage. Their greatest crime almost was this kind of negligence, but they're humans as well. The parents, they're at war the whole film, and it's only when they're drunk or at a certain level of intoxication that they can connect and they can love each other. Because I think in Scotland, alcohol is a way for a lot of people to love each other, be affectionate with each other. I've definitely noticed that in myself, you know. Um, it takes down away your inhibitions and you suddenly feel you can love. And that's dangerous, but there's a dark kind of beauty to it, I think, in this film.
Yeah, yeah, and a beautiful parallel filmmaking technique that you have is that, and it should be noted, we don't ever really see a giant row going on between the parents. We hear it. It is through the walls. It's and seeing the expressions on Nick's face. The final embrace of the two of them, of Nick and Charlie, and the sort of sense of grasping each other and feeling warmth in a home that's filled with dysfunction is really powerful and really meaningful. This whole short film is so really wonderful and so deserving of its Scottish BAFTA win, Sean. To wrap up, why is this film important today for queer audiences and really all audiences?
I think out of all of the problems that we have today, from what I can see, shame is the biggest and the most dangerous one, and actually the root of all addictions and a lot of mental illnesses. And for a long time, I just thought I was too rough or too damaged to be loved and to have a relationship. And it's a relentless, never-ending inner critic that's always trying to put distance between me and people I love. As much as we've had coming out stories before, and we've talked about the dangers of external homophobia, I'm much more interested in exploring what happens inside once you've come out, once you've been in that environment, what happens inside and that internal struggle you have between the part of you that needs love and the part of you that's getting in the way. And I think this film is about someone that opens their heart, and I think that's what everyone needs to do.
Well, this short film is so wonderful, so personal, so emotional, and so deserving of its Scottish BAFTA win. Thank you very much for being here, writer and director Sean Lìonadh, whose film is titled Too Rough. Congratulations again, Sean.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.